So over the last few weeks since the Xbox Series X was announced, Phil Spencer and Matt Booty, who are both heads of the Xbox division at Microsoft, have made it very clear in several interviews that there'll be no exclusive launch titles on the console, but for actual good reasons. And I want to read through this article here on Games Radar because they actually compiled several of these interviews in one article here really nicely, and it's actually pretty short. So we're going to read through it and kind of talk about how I think that this is actually very good news for the Nintendo Switch for years to come. And I know it sounds weird, but it's going to make sense here in a second. So what we're going to do is read through this, and we're going to actually start down here towards the end of the article because they made several updates to it with the new interviews. So it actually starts down here with the original story. So if you want to read the article on your own, again, there'll be a link to that in the description. So either way, let's get into it. So the original story starts here and says that the process of ensuring 3 previous console generations of games all play on Xbox Series X has been a lot of work. There is work in ensuring backwards compatibility across those generations, Phil Spencer said. So as you might remember, we slowed down and paused our backwards compatibility program for the Xbox 360 on Xbox One. It takes a lot of work even for Xbox One games because one of the biggest challenges is console games are usually hyper optimized to the unique hardware capabilities of the device, and this is a new generation of hardware. Ronald added, "It is a new chip architecture. At the same time, we did design the silicon with backwards compatibility in mind, so we did make certain decisions to try to lessen that work, but I don't want to trivialize how much work the team's actually doing because there is a tremendous amount of work." Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of work to make backwards compatibility possible. Unless you were watching the Xbox E3 2019 press conference very carefully, you might have just missed how awesome the Xbox Series X backwards compatibility will be. Microsoft announced that Xbox Series X will arrive at the end of 2020, but also teased just how far back its support for backwards compatibility will reach. Microsoft stated in its conference that Xbox Project Scarlet will support games from all 4 generations of Xbox consoles, which means Xbox Original, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and next-gen games. That is really, really cool. In a behind-closed-doors meeting at E3 2019, Microsoft's Dan McCulloch confirmed this to Games Radar. All of your current games will be forward-compatible to play on Scarlet and will look the best on Scarlet. That means that all Xbox One games plus all the Xbox 360 and original Xbox games currently available via Xbox One backwards compatibility will also be playable on Xbox. Wow, that was a lot of Xbox words in one sentence. We've already seen how the Xbox One backwards compatibility tech can liven up old games with smoother visuals, and given the Xbox Series X specs, it should be able to ramp that up even further. You can only do so much to old games, obviously, but the implications for Xbox One games are tantalizing. In any case, Xbox Project Scarlet backwards compatibility should make for quite the gaming library when it launches in 2020, so prepare yourself for some serious gaming sessions. But wait, there's more. Microsoft has also confirmed that your Xbox One peripherals will work with Xbox Series X too, and the new Xbox Series X controller will be backwards compatible with the Xbox One X family of consoles too. No specific word on Kinect yet, but we can hope. Okay, so that was a lot here. So basically what they're saying is it's going to be fully backwards compatible with all Xbox consoles that have ever been released, and they're making the peripherals like controllers and things also backwards compatible, which is really, really cool. Now, obviously, I want Nintendo Switch to take what Microsoft's doing here to heart when they release a Switch 2. I want, games to be backwards compatible and everything. I really think that makes the most sense, especially with Switch now becoming such a digital landscape now, right? Digital sales keep growing and growing by the year, and Switch is just so good for digital titles because of its mobile nature. I'm actually 100% digital on my Switch, other than my Zelda Breath of the Wild Collector's Edition I got on day one, so I have a cartridge for that. But all my other games, I have digital. I have a 400 gigabyte SD card. I never looked back. I love having them digital. And so I really hope with the next Switch, the Switch 2, that they learn from this as well. I want the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controllers to be backwards compatible and everything. And also my entire library, I want to be able to play on the next Switch. So this is really cool, but the main point I want to make here is actually in these extra pieces of interviews that they have up here. So we'll read through these other two little pieces here, because these pieces actually explain something else that Microsoft is doing, which is going to actually help the Switch for years to come. So in the first update, they say, both Phil Spencer and Xbox Partner Director of Program Management, Jason Ronald, expanded upon the Xbox Series X backwards compatibility in an interview with GameSpot. We wanted to make sure we had that day one, we could deliver on the compatibility promise, and so I've been playing quite a few Xbox 360 games on my Xbox Series X and Xbox One games on the Xbox Series X, and that's just to ensure that we can be there day one, Phil Spencer said. We have thousands of games that run on Xbox One today, Xbox Partner Director of Program Management, Jason Ronald, told GameStop. We want those games to be able to come forward with you, but we also want your services to come with you. We want your gaming legacy to come with you, whether that's your gamer score, whether that's your friends list, all your achievements, your game saves, all that should come forward so there are no barriers for you as you think about moving forward. This is so cool, guys. I've really become a fan of Microsoft over these last couple years, especially with their partnership sort of with Nintendo right now. They're very buddy-buddy and everything, but they're just so pro-consumer here, in my opinion. Like, having all this stuff transferable, that is amazing, and I want Switch to do that too. Again, if a Switch 2 comes out, I want my saves, I want all that stuff transferred over to that new Switch, and this is just such a cool thing. And this is just kind of a repeat of some of the other interview here, so I'm not going to read that. But the last piece here is the most interesting one, and this is the part that I am saying is going to actually help Nintendo Switch. So Xbox Series X backwards compatibility will go both ways, at least for the early years of the new console. Xbox Game Studios had Matt Booty confirmed Microsoft's commitment to making all new Xbox games playable within its current family of devices in a new interview. That means no console launch exclusives, at least not in the traditional sense. Okay, so he explains it here. As our content comes out over the next year, 2 years, all of our games, sort of like PC, will play up and down that family of devices, Booty told MCV. We want to make sure that if someone invests in an Xbox between now and Series X, that they feel that they made a good investment and that we're committed to them with content. That is so cool because, like, especially with Nintendo, everyone always jokes about how Miyamoto or whoever they're talking to in interviews will ask about, oh, is a new DS coming, or is a new Switch model coming, or whatever, and they'll always say, oh, we're only focused on the current console at this time, or we have no plans on a new console iteration. But then they always do that, right? Especially with the new 3DS. They said nothing new was coming, and then like a month later they announced a new 3DS. So it's something that is really always annoyed me, and so I really love how transparent Microsoft is being here and saying that they want us to feel comfortable purchasing an Xbox One even in its final years of its lifespan here, and not feel like we're getting ripped off because then a new console's coming, right? So they're saying for the first few years of the new console that all those games are going to be backwards compatible. And I want to talk about why that's good for Switch in a second. Let's read this last paragraph here. So Booty said it's still important that Halo will be there at the launch of the console, taking advantage of all the features. So even if you play through Halo Infinite on Xbox One first, you'll still have something to look forward to if you play it on the Xbox Series X later. So yeah. So why is this good for Nintendo Switch, guys? Well, think about it. Right now, Switch, its specs are pretty much in line with like the base PS4 model, mostly. So it's a little bit behind, right? Because we obviously have a PS4 Pro already. We have the Xbox One X and the S models. So they've already had their sort of like Pro additions to their hardware lineup, but Switch hasn't, right? Switch always sits kind of in the middle between launches. So the cool thing about this is now we've been seeing more and more third-party support for Switch, right? Because Typical game cycles are usually around 2 or 3 years, and the Switch is now on its third full year. It is just completed, right? So really, we should be seeing more and more day-and-date third-party releases like Doom Eternal or Mortal Kombat 11. And I know Doom Eternal, the Switch version was delayed, I believe, so it is going to come later, but originally that was planned to be day and date, right? We should be getting more and more of those now, and especially because of what Microsoft is doing here, because what they're doing here is they're going to be making all the new games that are coming out, Halo Infinite even, that game is going to be compatible both with the Xbox Series X and the Xbox One. So when they're developing these games, and as well as other third parties who are developing games for the Xbox Series X, they're also going to have to take into account the Xbox One X. I'm sorry, these names are like confusing me, but basically they have to develop for the new console and the old console. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening with Switch right now, is people are developing for, PS4 and Xbox One, but then they have to downport it to Switch because the specs are less. But now that they're going to be keeping stuff backwards compatible with the new hardware, think about if a Switch Pro releases this year, right? That means it's going to be releasing right around the same time as the next gen consoles. And if this Pro version then is beefed up and is more in line with, say, the PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, or maybe it's even, a little bit more powerful, which would be awesome, then when these developers are developing for these next gen consoles, it's going to require way less work to port it over to Switch, right? So that way all these developers who just say, oh, it's too much work to focus on the Switch right now, so we focus on the current gen consoles, right? That's kind of what they always say with the PS4 and Xbox One right now. But with these new hardware iterations, they're already gonna be downporting them for the older hardware. And if the Switch Pro is more in line with those, then it's gonna be way easier to just port it right over, right? So I think this is super exciting for Switch, and I really hope within the next year or so, we keep seeing more and more day and date releases, because at this point, there's really no excuse. Switch is killing it. It's got over 40 million units that have sold so far. It's not slowing down. Switch Lite is killing it. A Switch Pro is on the horizon. So there is no reason we shouldn't be getting more and more day and date. And if we don't, then that's just being lazy, I feel like, because we're already doing it now. We've already gotten games day and date with the current system. So this is going to be super exciting for the future of Switch, for Microsoft and everything. Right here, they're claiming that they're saying the next year or 2 years. So that means for at least the first 2 years of the Xbox Series X console, they're going to be downporting those for the current hardware right now. So let's say a Switch 2 comes out in 2 or 3 years. That means it's going to be right in line with the next gen hardware, which would be so cool. So it almost feels like Nintendo is sort of going to be putting itself back into the same sort of timeline as the other hardware, right? It's going to be sort of the same as Sony and Microsoft now, if this is true, if we do get a Pro this year and then maybe a Switch 2 in 2 to 3 years. So I am super excited for this. We should be getting more and more games day and date, more and more third-party support. But I really want to know what you guys think about this, because I know a lot of people, obviously, they've done several polls and everything, and found out that a lot of Switch owners have more than one console, right? They have a Switch or a PS4 or an Xbox or PC. So me personally, I have my Switch and I have my laptop here, which I've been using it for Game Pass and stuff. So I'm really curious, if you have a Switch right now, are you going to buy a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or not? Or are you going to buy just a Switch Pro? Or are you going to buy all the consoles? I'm really curious. This next generation is just so interesting. So many things are happening, so many moving parts. It's exciting for everyone. It's exciting for Nintendo, for Sony, for Microsoft, for all gamers, for all fans. It's just a really exciting time to be a part of the gaming world, So let me know what your thoughts are on about this, and I'll see you in the next one.